Once upon a time, in a kingdom filled with bustling markets, towering castles, and whispering forests, a prophecy was whispered across the land. It foretold that a boy, born with the mark of fortune, would one day marry the king's daughter when he reached the age of 19. The news traveled far, and it reached the ears of a wandering king who happened to be passing through a small village. His eyes widened with curiosity and fear as the villagers recounted the prophecy. "This boy," the king muttered, "is destined to claim my daughter. If fate allows him to live, my bloodline will be entwined with his. I cannot allow it." Determined to thwart the prophecy, the king sought out the infant boy and offered a hefty sum to his unsuspecting parents, claiming he would provide the child with the best upbringing. The boy's parents, tempted by wealth and flattery, agreed. One stormy night, the king's men placed the baby in a tiny box and threw it into a rushing river, convinced the current would sweep him away. The box, however, did not sink. The river carried it gently over smooth rocks and around bends until it washed up on the shore. There, a kind-hearted, childless miller discovered the baby. He picked him up, held him close, and declared, "You shall be my son." The miller raised the boy with love and care, never knowing that fate had preserved the child for the very prophecy the king had tried to erase. Years passed, and the boy grew into a brave, clever, and kind young man. On the eve of his 19th birthday, the winds of destiny began to stir once more. The king, having learned the boy was nearing the prophesied age, devised a sinister plan. He wrote a sealed letter to the queen, commanding that the boy be killed immediately upon delivery. When the boy arrived at the palace, the king sent him to deliver this letter without revealing the true nature of its contents. The young man, oblivious to the deadly instructions, began his journey. The forest ahead was thick with tangled branches, moss-covered rocks, and eerie sounds that made the shadows seem alive. Soon, a band of robbers appeared, their eyes glinting as they saw the boy and the sealed letter. "Give us the letter," they demanded. Trembling, the boy handed it over. The robbers opened it and read the cruel command. Shocked by its content, they exchanged worried glances. "Poor boy," one exclaimed. "He is to be murdered for no fault of his own." In a rare act of kindness, they replaced the letter with a new one that instructed the queen to marry the boy to her daughter instead. The young man, unaware of the swap, continued his journey. When he finally reached the palace and handed the letter to the queen, she opened it and gasped. True joy and relief lit her face. She embraced the young man, knowing he was not only alive but destined to be her husband. Their love blossomed swiftly, and soon preparations for their wedding began, filling the palace with music, laughter, and fragrant flowers. But the king, enraged that fate had outwitted him, demanded one final, impossible task to challenge the boy. "You will only remain my son-in-law," the king roared, "if you obtain 3 golden hairs from the devil who lives in the heart of the Black Forest." The young man, courageous and determined, did not falter. He accepted the challenge without hesitation. With his bride's blessing and a small satchel of food, he set off into the dense, shadowy forest. Every step was met with gnarled roots and mysterious sounds that made the air quiver with the unknown. After hours of walking, he encountered a frail old woman with kind eyes, the devil's grandmother. She listened as he explained the king's demand and the perilous nature of his task. "You are brave, young one," she said softly, "and I will help you. Fear not the devil, for he is easily deceived by wit and cunning." When the devil returned home, sensing an intruder, the grandmother calmed him. "You imagine shadows where none exist," she chided. Then, with clever words, she distracted the devil, posing questions that demanded his attention. While he was engaged, she plucked 3 golden hairs from his head and handed them to the boy, saying, "Go now, your task is done." The young man, astonished yet grateful, accepted the hairs. His heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. he had succeeded where many would have failed. With the golden hairs safely tucked away, the young man made his way back through the forest. Along the way, he encountered hidden dangers, dark caves, rushing rivers, and sly foxes, but his determination never wavered. He thought of his bride and the justice he sought against the king's treachery. At last, he emerged from the black forest, exhausted but victorious. He presented the 3 golden hairs to the king, along with a chest of glittering gold he had collected along his journey. The king, astounded by the boy's courage and resourcefulness, could scarcely believe his eyes. "You have done the impossible," the king exclaimed, though envy and greed still flickered in his gaze. "I am compelled to honor my promise." The young man's wisdom, bravery, and virtue had earned him not only the hand of the princess but also the respect of the kingdom. Yet the king's greed could not be quenched. He schemed to learn the secrets of the boy's wealth, hoping to claim some of it for himself. But fate, as ever, was just. The king's pursuit led him astray, and he was forced to spend the remainder of his days in humble toil, ferrying people across rivers far from his throne. Meanwhile, the young man and the princess lived happily, ruling with wisdom, kindness, and fairness. Their love and virtue became a beacon for the entire kingdom. The 3 golden hairs, symbols of the devil's power and the boy's courage, were kept safely in the royal treasury, reminders of the triumph of good over evil. In time, the story of the boy who had braved forests, devils, and kings' schemes spread far and wide. Children in villages whispered it to one another, inspired by his courage. Adults marveled at his wit, and the kingdom flourished under his and the princess's fair rule. The moral of the story endured for generations: good always triumphs over evil, and a heart that is honest, courageous, and true can overcome even the darkest of challenges. The boy who once floated in a tiny box on the river now sat on the throne, proof that destiny rewards virtue, bravery, and cleverness. And so, the young man and his princess bride lived long, happy, and just lives, leaving behind a tale of courage, wit, and the eternal power of goodness. If you like the story, then do subscribe, share, and press the bell icon for more interesting stories.